when the mayor came in, he didn't think that neighborhood code belonged under the police department. He thought of it more as a community development tool.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So he thought it was sending the wrong message out. I mean, it's because somebody can't fix their gutter doesn't make them a criminal, right?
Welcome to this episode of Neighboring, a podcast where we have discussions about what makes a healthy neighborhood healthy and what it means to be a good neighbor. And today I am here with Cindy Joyner of the city of Fort Wayne. We've been longtime collaborators in terms of NeighborLink in the city of Fort Wayne and have talked numerous occasions about issues facing our neighbors, where people are helping, challenges in our community. And I really wanted to have a conversation about that today and kind of take some of our offline conversations and let kind of the public know a little bit more about the role of the community development department in the community, all that goes on, what people know and what people might not know of the challenges. So welcome, Cindy, to the Neighboring podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
So this is new for me. I'm old school, so podcasts are new. So.
Well, podcasts are new for us.
Okay.
So it's a really great format for having a conversation. So introduce yourself. Are you originally from Fort Wayne?
No, actually I'm from Michigan.
Okay.
Moved here the first time in 1982 and lived here a couple of years and met my husband here. St. Patty's Day of '84. Thought, wow, Fort Wayne's not so bad, right? It was a big adjustment when I moved here from Michigan. Spent a lot of time in Ann Arbor, going into Detroit, going into Windsor. So totally different mindset than Fort Wayne back in '82. A lot more conservative than what I was used to. And then met Michael and thought, wow, it's not so bad. Yeah. And then I had an opportunity to move to the D.C. area, to Northern Virginia, and took it and moved. Right. And then Michael is from Fort Wayne, and when we had our son Jordan in '93, we still lived in Northern Virginia and decided I wanted to stay home. I was, 35. And Michael said, well, if you want to leave corporate, I want to leave corporate. I want to be a police officer. Let's move back to Fort Wayne. We can afford for you to stay home and I can be a cop. So we came back to Fort Wayne then in '94.
Okay.
And we've been here ever since.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Walk me through some of you're the Director of Community Development here for the City of Fort Wayne. You spent a decade as the Neighborhood Code Compliance Director. Mm-hmm. And you've been working for the City of Fort Wayne for longer than that. Walk me through some of your career trajectory. What are the kind of the variety of jobs that you've done?
So from the standpoint of the city, I started in 2002. And I think, we're talking about neighborhoods, right? So when we moved here, we rented an apartment. We just wanted to find out where, even though Michael was from here, where we wanted to live. Yeah. And we keyed in to the 07 now, right? To our neighborhood in Harrison Hill and moved in and was only there a really short time. It was May of '95 we moved into our house. Okay. And funny, the day we closed, we found out we were pregnant with our daughter. And we were only there a few months. People came up, they knocked on the door, welcomed us, brought us gifts, all that kind of stuff. And about a couple months later, I get this knock inviting me to a meeting, a neighborhood association meeting.
All right.
Right? And so I went, unbeknownst to me, you just showed up and you became something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's pretty standard.
Yeah, so I became the treasurer, went to that meeting, was nominated and voted in as treasurer of Harrison Hill.
Okay.
And so that was in 95. And then, I stayed pretty active. I stayed really active on the board, stayed on the board until actually I started to work for Neighborhood Code. And so, frankly, that's how I actually found my job with the city of Fort Wayne.
Okay.
There was an opening at Neighborhood Code, and this is in 2002.
Yeah.
Michael, of course, is on the police department, and I'll never forget Gina Kostoff was the advocate
Okay.
up in the mayor's office.
Yeah.
She knew me from going to all the president's meetings and and quadrant meetings.
Yeah.
And so this position came open in Neighborhood Code. Greg Leatherman was the director at the time. Mm-hmm. And so Gina reached out to Michael and said, "Oh my gosh, there is a position that Cindy would be perfect for, customer relations manager for Neighborhood Code. She'd just be perfect." So I sent my resume, and we were in the old building over on Washington,
Yeah.
and I got the job. So that's how I started.
How long did you serve as kind of a customer representative before you became the director?
I did that. So that was 2002. And in 2008, Mayor Henry took office as mayor.
Yeah.
And at the time that he took office, Neighborhood Code had left community development. When I started, it was under community development.
Okay.
And then it was moved under the police department. So that meant the director had to be a captain on the police department. So I stayed in that, citizens or that customer relations position. When the mayor came in, he didn't think that Neighborhood Code belonged under the police department. He thought of it more as a community development tool.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So he thought it was sending the wrong message out. It's because somebody can't fix their gutter doesn't make them a criminal, right? That whole enforcement. So he moved Neighborhood Code back underneath community development. And so then our captain of the police department went back to the police department. Yeah. And then John Urbans, I think, was in my position now, my current position. And they interviewed me and a couple of other people, and I got that position. Yeah. So.
Yeah, you and I met not long after I started at the beginning of 2008 at NeighborLink and started plugging in and code enforcement type projects. Mm-hmm. Found NeighborLink's website quite often just by the nature of the way that the violations happen or the citations, and then people are searching for opportunities, and code enforcement had always been, or code compliance had always been really more trying to help and serve homeowners in an attempt to try to find some assistance outside. So we ended up getting a lot of those projects, and
thank goodness.
And fortunately, our volunteers always kind of would try to plug in the most we could. Give us a quick synopsis of what the code compliance world is all about from a city's perspective.
So I think it's something different for everybody.
Yeah.
Depends on if you're on the receiving end of a letter or if you're the one that's generating that call that's going to start the process for that letter. And then something in between. And frankly, I've always looked at it, we were neighborhood code enforcement when I started and when I took over as director. And one of the things that I spoke with the mayor about was, I don't think people should feel like criminals because they can't repair their home. Yeah. I think if there's something that the community may not be totally aware of is the depth and the numbers of people that need assistance, that need help. And it can be seniors, it can be single moms or single parents. It just a myriad of different people that need help.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I really wanted to change is, we were called neighborhood code Nazis for a while. And I really wanted to get away from that enforcement kind of mentality to, this is really about strengthening the neighborhoods, making sure people are living in really healthy, safe homes. Neighborhood, people's real estate is stable or appreciating. And so I thought compliance was a much better fit. The mayor agreed. It fit with his idea of us falling back under community development as a tool. And so to me, that was really important to move us under that, because that really, to me, is what neighborhood code is about. It's really about making sure children have safe places to live and play in their neighborhoods. People are living in safe structures, whether it's a rental, it's owner occupied. And really, when we met, it was really trying to find people to help.
Yeah, I find, one, we always kind of talk about NeighborLink being kind of the bottom of the social service funnel. As people seek assistance for their tangible needs and strike out at a number of organizations, we've attempted to try to be the bottom to collect and be the organization that says maybe. And what that really has done, I think the most significant over the last 11 years that I've been around, is you just get to see all of the unmet needs in a community.
Definitely.
Some are grand and beyond any imagination of being able to fix and solve. Some are really small and anybody can do it. And I think code enforcement, from my perspective, is similar from a city's perspective. By the time code compliance gets involved, they are those agents that are interacting and responding to the needs nobody else wants to meet. Or they're identifying the things no one's able to address, including the person that's living there in many cases. Sure, there are neighbors in our community that make radical choices not to, and they're just not going to. But that's such a smaller percentage, when you say, of people that
definitely.
Over the course of the year they get maybe a violation or something.
Definitely.
Much smaller percentage of people are doing it because they don't care.
Right. And I would agree. I will say, the one thing that I think people are really surprised at with code is, it's those little things that if we can, because we do see the wide spectrum, right? Yeah. So just like, the elderly lady that ended up, that house is gone. Yeah. But because that house was in such dire need, there wasn't any bringing it back. It was so far gone. But it's those little things that create that beginning, those beginning issues that, if left untreated, that's what is left, and you have no other choices but to remove them from their home. So it's like taking care of, a roof. It's so vital. If a roof can be replaced, that stops any water, or maybe there's no water that's getting in, no mold, none of those things that are really, really expensive to fix. If we can put gutters, something really inexpensive, just gutters on a house, repairing those, that might be a $300 fix. Yeah. Well, when they go on left for a few years, all of a sudden that water is hitting the foundation. Now all of a sudden we have foundation issues, which are extremely expensive. Maybe the wall goes. Yeah. The electrical issues, when people go in and they try to fix them on their own, all of a sudden they don't know what they're doing, and all of a sudden we have an electrical fire. There's just so many little things that if we could get help on the front end, it just doesn't devolve into something that's so much bigger that nobody can get involved in, really.
Yeah, you transitioned to become the director of community development a little over a year ago.
Yeah.
Walk us through the whole, as the director of community development. Walk us through your department, all the different areas in our community
Okay.
that kind of fall under community development, so our audience can kind of understand from a city's perspective all the different elements that take place.
Okay. So community development obviously has neighborhood code as one of the elements. Redevelopment is under economic development, and redevelopment is under community development, which a lot of the sexy things that you see coming up out of the ground is redevelopment.
Okay.
Right? Or they've got their fingers in it.
Give us an
somehow.
example of a redevelopment project, a recent redevelopment
Hampton,
project. Okay.
You know, when they opened,
A new hotel.
that had interactions with redevelopment. The new boutique hotel
Sure.
has redevelopment involved.
Okay.
We're in, there's some sites that will be along the riverfront that we're actively looking at right now, working with potential developers. The Landing, which is really cool, that's getting ready to open in October.
Yeah.
Stacy's doing a great job with Streetscape and working with it. It's all under redevelopment and economic development. So that's all really cool stuff. Parking garages may not be so sexy, but they're really important.
Sure.
So, we're adding 2 levels of flooring to the Civic Garage. I know a lot of the new projects that are going on or will be coming up will all have a parking component. Most of them will have a public parking component to it, which is really important.
Yeah.
So it's addressing the parking concerns. Having, helping rural sourcing come to Fort Wayne, working with incentives, it's economic development.
Sure.
Working with Sweetwater, that has a lot to do with the staff that I work with. There's a lot of components. I mean, there's a lot of agencies and a lot of people, but certainly their fingerprints are there.
Yeah. So when you think of community development department, a lot of those projects are bigger scale, downtown development oriented, at least those projects you listed. How does that connect to some of the neighborhood development initiatives that are going on now?
Well, so that's economic and redevelopment, right? Yeah. But we also have the Office of Housing and Neighborhood Services, and they actually receive the funding for CDBG, for home funds. They were the ones that were just awarded, which there was a news release that just went out about the lead paint program. Sure. They have a direct influence on those neighborhoods, right? So we have a roof and repair program that we're utilizing CDBG funds for. So they have a farmer's market right in the heart of Southeast, Renaissance Point, Johnny May Farms. It's thriving. It's a food desert. So direct impact. They're working with the 10-Point Coalition with Ira Kedley's group in Oxford with homeowner repair. And so, they've got direct roots right into the neighborhoods. Then we also have planning and policy that works hand in hand with all the various neighborhood associations and different groups. So they will help, let's say, for example, maybe you had Bloomingdale. I'm going to pick a different neighborhood, Bloomingdale. Let's say they wanted a new plan for Bloomingdale. Sure. They have a new president. Yeah. And Gene and Bud did a super job, but they now have a new president. Maybe he'd want some different changes. Maybe the neighborhood, as it's changing, wants something different. They'd be able to reach out to our planning and policy, and they'd work with them to coordinate a neighborhood plan, give them some implementation steps that they could, and goals that they could work towards.
Yeah. How often does that happen between neighborhoods and, say, the planning?
I think it happens on a regular basis. Right now we're working with Southeast to redo the Southeast strategy, which will have an impact on the neighborhood Southeast, as well as the goal will be, actually it's where everybody comes together then. It's not only planning, but then it's the economic development driver. How do we drive economic development southeast, which is really exciting? How do we help with actually growing, Posterity Heights? Office of Housing and Neighborhood Services put money into Posterity Heights to get those buildings up. Yep. So, it's all really exciting how it all plays together to build a stronger community and to make Fort Wayne really great. Excited. There is an energy now. There's a real energy. If I went back to 82, 84 when I left, and I probably shouldn't say this as community development director, but I couldn't wait to leave, right? I'd like to see myself as I was millennial before millennials.
All right.
Right? It was all about location and things to do and energy. And Fort Wayne, frankly, was pretty conservative and pretty happy with the status quo. And I am just saying, now we are alive. I love the fact, and I think this is the same, I'm probably getting off a little bit, but we have the Summit City Match going on. We're really trying to work with entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs. It's not just us, it's everybody. Yeah. Seeing that creativity and younger people coming in, they have voices that can be heard. They actually have the ability to actually create and see it happen.
Sure.
It's exciting. Yeah. Being able to go over next to Pint and Slice, seeing the murals, seeing, how we now have alleyways that are now walkways with lighting. That's exciting.
There has been some really great public area activation.
Yes, I
in the
love
last few
that.
months. Yeah. It shows, to your point, it shows that there are members of our community looking for ways to be a part of the story. And I think that's a story of those that are active in Fort Wayne. There's just always been a lower bar for individuals that have ideas and vision for creating something to be able to actually move towards those. Is the process easy? Not always, but the access and the opportunity to really take an idea and figure it out and move it to activation is possible in Fort Wayne with a lot fewer steps than a lot of other communities. And so, to your point, there is a lot of energy and there's a narrative and a new story being written or discovered, really.
Yeah, and people are starting to take notice outside of Fort Wayne, which is what's really exciting. Right. So we're getting ready to host this month, 19th, 20th, and 21st, the Regional Neighborhood Network Conference. Yeah. And they haven't been here since 2012.
Okay, what is that?
So there are 5 bordering, it's including Indiana, 5 states, and it rotates every year. And so you have community leaders, you have, whether they're officials or neighborhood leaders, they all converge on a city, and there's workshops and all kinds of different things going on so that there's actually conversation. You can go away with best practices and take them back to your own city. And so we are really, really eager to host it because Promenade is now open, the riverfront is alive, there's just so many things going on. So many different, too bad the landing won't be open yet. We'll be about a month short, a little less than that. But when they came, there's a steering committee, and they came, I want to say it's been maybe 3 or 4 months ago. They couldn't believe what they saw. They were just so surprised since 2012. Yeah. We are so much more walkable. Things don't roll up at 5 o'clock. Everybody go away. There's things going on the weekends. Yeah. So we're really excited. This year we're calling it Playing the Fort. Right. So we're really, really excited. There's going to be at least 300 people. Yeah. So.
Well, we're looking forward to being part of it too. We are presenting a couple workshops, so it'll be fun.
So that's really cool. Yeah. Right. And we're doing some workshops out in the field. Yeah. Where people get to roll up their sleeves. Sure. Which is cool. Yeah. We've got some great tours, great workshops, so we're really excited.
That's great. What are some of the things you wish the general public knew about the government's role in community or neighborhood development?
You know, and I'm going to say this off the cuff, we can't do everything. Yeah. We really need partners. Like you guys, right? With NeighborLink. We just cannot do everything. We really do need to be able to have those relationships where we can all come together with several groups to figure out how to come up with a solution. We don't have all the answers either, right? There are so many people out there that have really great ideas or solutions to problems, and to be able to work with others to make those solutions happen would be really helpful.
You and I were both on a recent trip to Louisville with about 50 others. We did a couple of podcasts and I did some interviewing along the way. And collaboration came up a lot in reflections of what people picked up on or what they wish or want for Fort Wayne. And collaboration is not a new topic. You're just kind of touching on it there. However, I'm wanting to understand, like, from your perspective, what does healthy or like solid collaboration look like?
So to me, that looks like people leaving their silos behind and not worried about turf, right? I've never been one to be worried about a title or about power, none of that. It really has never interested me, to be honest. Corner off has not ever been motivating to me. What's really been motivated is, I think, collaboration is when you really put what matters at the forefront. And for me, it's all about the people, it's about the neighborhoods, it's about who we serve. And true collaboration happens when everybody's coming together with that same viewpoint. And I think it's starting to happen we went to Louisville, right? And I thought it was a wonderful trip. And, we've pulled the steering committee together. Mayor's very supportive of advancing cities, moving that ahead. And, Brad Little with Community Foundation, David Nicole with United Way, we've all talked about it. We've got Dr. Robinson, we've got Marty with the Y there, IRIC. There's several people on that steering committee, but really not worried about turf and getting credit, but really looking at bringing everybody together. And as a group, we only do better as a whole. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
I think it's those silos and that turfdom that really kind of gets in everybody's way.
Yeah, I find from my experience, my limited experience, I feel like collaboration happens more often than we think, or it happens more naturally when there are mutually interested parties, to your point, towards a central theme. And collaboration breaks down when that mutually agreed theme isn't in everyone's best interest, or we're not quite ready for it. And I think we can look at failed collaboration at times as a negative and maybe ego-driven, like this wasn't going to work because we didn't understand it, but then we didn't understand what was in it for me, but there's a greater understanding of, like, we're all on a learning journey as well. And we came to the table ready to talk about collaboration, but we walked away recognizing that maybe I'm not ready or they're not ready to collaborate because we're just not on the same page yet. And I think that's a healthy recognition too, and can help to reframe some of the collaborative conversation. But how do we go from acknowledging we don't know what we don't know, and to kind of learning and keeping those conversations going?
Well, you know what? The one thing I was most impressed with Louisville about was the fact that they were willing to admit they had made a lot of mistakes. Sure. So all of this is it's a journey. And there are going to be failures along the way, and just being able to own them, right? And I was just so impressed that they were able to do that and not hide. They tackled some serious issues. And I think John mentioned it that last day that we were, debriefing before we left. That was the first time I really heard a community talk about redlining. Typically those hard discussions just don't happen. People kind of dance around it. And, one of the things I just really hope happens here, and I think it's starting, is that we're able to have those really hard conversations where we're really honest and upfront, because that's the only way we're going to grow. We have to actually be able to admit to the issues that we have, and why we've gotten to this point for us to move forward.
Yeah.
So,
if a neighborhood is, going from a relatively stagnant, disconnected community to trying to figure out ways to reconnect itself to the city, really trying to grow and activate, what is the kind of the best approach for that neighborhood association to kind of get going and or bridge a relationship with the city of Fort Wayne?
So Palermo Galindo is our neighborhood advocate.
Yeah.
To get started, I would say that's probably the first source or point of contact. But then we have some wonderful leaders out there in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And actually linking this neighborhood that really wants to come back up,
sure,
or get reignited, whatever, to link them with some of these individuals that are really proving themselves. I mean, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, if the city had to pay all of these volunteers in these neighborhood associations and in these partnerships, we couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
I mean, these people put so much energy and hours into their communities. It's unbelievable. And if there's something I think that's really people don't get, it's even in their own neighborhoods, how much their neighborhood president and these boards
it's pretty incredible.
Put in.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's an unbelievable amount of time and effort.
We recently wrapped up kind of phase one of a multi-phase neighborhood research project in our attempt to try to understand what are some of the characteristics that make a healthy neighborhood healthy. And it's at this point trying to really, what are the indicators? What do people in the neighborhoods kind of say around that? And to your point, we interact with 5 different neighborhoods of all different kind of backgrounds and perspectives and the amount of energy. And there's some neighborhoods that are really thriving, but they're putting in a lot of time and a lot of energy and bringing a lot of intellectual capital to bear. And they've been gaining momentum over the years, but year after year it's really impressive. And then you try to imagine as a nonprofit outside organization that's looking to connect dots and trying to come alongside neighborhoods to help, and you run into some situations where you begin to wonder, like, can a neighborhood take the next step towards a more comprehensive neighborhood development strategy or plan that brings in millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands, or wants to develop this particular block? And then it becomes like, how are they going to do that with a group of volunteers? And because the potential and their knowledge and their desire, because they own that area and they know it, but how did they get to the next phase?
So that's actually, I think planning can actually help with that.
Okay.
To actually help guide maybe what's some reasonable goals, like an overarching plan.
Sure.
But then what are some realistic goals that they could actually achieve?
Yeah.
Whether it's working, depending on whether it's infrastructure, whether it's, maybe it's working with, maybe, I don't know. I was going to say it's too bad the roof and furnace thing didn't work out, but that we had down at council. But I mean, it's some kind of repair program for some of the neighbors, or is there a way to, I don't know, working together to bring maybe some other resources in to help.
In all of the years, what are some of the things we don't make a big enough deal about that we should?
In all of the years.
So think about, or what are some of the things we make a much bigger deal than we should?
So,
in terms of neighborhoods, community development, city development, city planning.
I'm thinking, well, frankly, it is, and I will take this back to the neighborhoods, how important our neighborhoods are to our city and the strength of our city, because it you can tell those neighborhoods that actually have active neighborhood associations and those that don't.
Yeah,
right?
What are some indicators that you've seen?
So what you see, and you know what, and it doesn't all circle around just an affluent neighborhood. I mean, we're talking core neighborhoods, really. So what you see is you see neighbors where you have a neighborhood association that may actually be helping out. Maybe they're elderly or some of their other neighbors with mowing, with trimming their shrubs. You know, you might see them actually do snow removal for some of their neighbors. You see people out communicating, really being vigilant, even from a crime standpoint, being willing to call in if they see, you know, suspicious activity. The houses tend to be in better shape. You see, you know, one neighbor start to work on their house, and sure enough, it grows. And I think you also have the leadership, that volunteer leadership that is actually communicating with all of the various city departments and with whatever partnership that they're in, saying, look, you guys need to notice us. We need this alley taken care of. We need this road taken care of. You need to see it. So they have a voice. And it's, you know, and I don't want to say the squeaky wheel gets it, but there's a voice. Versus then you look at those neighborhoods that don't have anyone, and you tend to see more vacant houses. They tend to be less kept up. Because you may have in an active neighborhood association, and I can speak to mine, literally, we had, and this was back like 07, 08 when everything was tanking, 09. And we had bankruptcies and foreclosures, but we mowed, so nobody knew from at least the grass standpoint that those houses were vacant. Mm-hmm. We just took it on. People walked the neighborhood and picked up litter. Where if there's nobody there to do that, no one's doing it, right? So you have higher vacancy. You have more vandalism because you don't have anybody watching, right? So you don't have people calling in. You know, that vehicle that's got a flat tire, I know the person that's got the flat tire doesn't want neighborhood code to show up, but it only strengthens, you know, it strengthens that neighborhood. And we've actually had people, from a code standpoint, say, you know what, thank you for letting us know. Thanks for sending that letter. We, you know, had all the best intentions and it just got away from us. Sure. Now we'll do it.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, but you can see it, and you just don't have anybody really going to bat for them. Not truly. Yeah. Right? So they don't have the services of planning because they're not reaching out, right? And maybe the support of the businesses that, you know, are right there interconnected with them, right? So I'll use Friendly Fox as an example on South Wayne. It's got so much neighborhood support, all those active neighborhoods around it, you know, and so that means it's going to be healthy. Yeah. People are willing to go spend their money there, so. It's economic development, it's community development, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's all helpful, of that.
It's helpful to describe and illustrate different things that are going on to a neighborhood with a bigger category and a bigger, you know, title of like what's happening in Friendly Fox. Yes, it's a small business, but it's economic development, and there's crime prevention because it's an active corner. Like there's a whole wide variety of things that help people understand what's actually going on in your neighborhood rather than, oh, there's just a coffee shop, restaurant there.
And now we have a new neighborhood. I'd say downtown is a new neighborhood.
Yeah.
People are living downtown. We're starting to see people walking their dogs. That means people are living here. Yeah. So
I've changed my my running route. I live just about a mile south of downtown and in a neighborhood, and so the last few weeks I've been kind of changing my route rather than going further south into the 07 and parks and neighborhoods. I'm starting to work my way back downtown.
Yeah.
Still waiting on those more bike lanes to get me into downtown, but I'm not afraid of riding into downtown. When the pushback from the community comes to your office and towards your team, how do you encourage your team to kind of stay focused on what they're doing and the meaningful work they're doing?
Actually, it's just, I'm going to go back to code for a second. It is, to me, that can be a pretty thankless job.
Yeah.
There can be...
It's pretty heavy.
Because you get, you said, even with me taking on this new position, wow, there's a lot of people coming up and going, wow, this is really cool. Look at all the great things.
Yeah.
Versus, being cussed out as soon as you pick up the phone, or, or having somebody screaming at you or threatening you.
The percentage of positive conversations I imagine that happen in the code enforcement office is pretty small on a weekly basis.
But, and so it's making sure that, and I would take that out to even planning and all of us, right?
Yeah.
But it's always making sure that we understand who we're here to assist, right? It's really about the citizens, and it's about building this community and how cool it is. And really focusing on those that we've already helped from a code standpoint, who we can help, but then it's everything coming up out of the ground. Because it's the city hasn't seen this kind of growth in a long time.
Yeah.
Right? So it's really exciting. It's just bringing them back to what's really important, right? And why we're here.
Yeah. You and your husband.
Great team, by the way.
Great.
Community development's a great team. Great talent. Couldn't have a better team.
Well, it seems like they're working hard lately.
They are.
Yeah. Extremely
Extremely hard. We could probably use a few more people. Just saying. So.
Well, I hope that happens.
Saying.
You and your husband, Michael, have served in public offices for a long time, interacting with the public in a variety of ways. What or when have you seen the best in people come out? Like, what happens, and when do you see the best in neighbors and individuals in a community come out?
You know what? I think when there's a crisis, people come out the best. I think Fort Wayne is unique in the fact that we have a lot of really generous people here. I think we're a lot more generous than we give ourselves credit for. So when there's a crisis, people come out. Look at what happened with that. I'm going to use that elderly. You guys stepped up.
Yeah.
We didn't even know she had family. They kind of came up, but it was people coming together to make it work for her.
Yeah.
But it's happened all over the city. I think it's when there's a crisis, people really band together to really help.
Yeah. As we move to a close here, what do you think? What do you think it means to be a good neighbor? What makes a good neighbor?
Well, what I would say, actually respecting your neighbors, and trying to work with your neighbors. I'm going to say reaching out to them, especially if you have somebody that can't do it on their own, to actually reach out, paying attention in the neighborhood, so that there's eyes in the neighborhood. But it's really reaching out to neighbors and trying, if somebody needs help, trying to come up with something, whether it's pulling in NeighborLink or other services or a church or somebody to actually help them. But I'm going to speak to the other side of the fence too. People have to realize, and we walk a fine line with personal property rights, right? With property rights. Yeah. But people have to realize when you live in a community, your actions affect not just your property, but everybody else in that neighborhood. And it is a small percentage, but there is a percentage nonetheless that says I can do whatever I want. I'm not going to do this. But what you're doing, first off, you're hurting your own investment, but you have just It's when neighborhood code gets involved, really. You have just actually created a situation that is negatively impacting everyone. And I would classify that person as not a good neighbor, right? Because they're actually bringing down, the collective whole by their actions.
That's a good thought.
But anyway.
Cindy, thank you so much for all of your leadership in Fort Wayne and the impact that you've had in the community. Thank you for trusting NeighborLink to be a partner with the city for so long, both in code as well as the community development department. We enjoy this and want to be good neighbors and try to figure out how we can connect neighbors the best that we can. And having the support of you and others here in your office makes that possible, because even us, where we're trying to respond, we can't always respond quickly or immediately, but we are responding, and there's always been grace and flexibility along that journey. So we have a lot to be thankful for that. So,
well, I would really like to thank you because you guys have made such a difference in our community. Could you imagine our community without you guys or people like you and all your volunteers and your staff? I mean, this has been a great partnership, and you guys stepped in when everything else was dropping off because, the economy was tanking. There were so many issues. And I just have to thank you because we couldn't have done this without you guys. I just love your organization.
Thank you. Thank you. We have incredible neighbors, and it's a great illustration that there are neighbors in every community that want to help and want to respond to those crises.
Yep.
And what NeighborLink allows us to do is break down those on a very small individual basis that allow individuals and small groups of people to be able to respond in their own way and help their neighbors the way they want. It's incredible. I'm still blown away that it works. So I'm grateful for that. It does. Okay. Well, thank you for being on this episode of Neighboring, the podcast, and sharing your experience and your wisdom with us.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, we will cut this episode for now, and we'll be back next week for another episode of Neighboring.